They came in peace. At least that's what they claimed. The sky turned violet for 3 whole days before the first ship landed. Not in silence, not in stealth, but with a thunderous roar that cracked mountains and boiled oceans. The aliens called themselves the Virexian Council, a so-called peaceful coalition of over 90 species. Their leader, a floating jellyfish-looking thing named Chancellor Zhu, hovered above the UN General Assembly and promised unity, progress, and interstellar trade. But humans have heard those promises before, from empires, colonizers, kings. Always the same sweet lies dressed in shining words. At first, Earth bent the knee. Our leaders shook their slimy hands. We allowed observation hubs in major cities, New York, Shanghai, Johannesburg. They gave us trinkets, fusion energy, skin regeneration pills, a cure for cancer. In return, they demanded resources. Oceans were drained, forests leveled, mountains mined to dust. And then came the disappearances. No one noticed at first. A few homeless here, a poor village there. But it wasn't long before kids from good neighborhoods went missing. Whole towns were suddenly relocated for interstellar development. Human protests were ignored, whistleblowers vanished, and the Virexians smiled through it all. Until a little town in Montana said no. Population 842. Mostly ranchers, old vets, and second chancers. When a Virexian hover collector came for their kids, they didn't run. They didn't negotiate. They fought. It was bloody. Alien plasma tore through homes. Half the town burned. But before it was over, 5 Virexian collectors were dead. Killed with shotguns, pitchforks, a homemade EMP cannon built by a retired engineer with too much time, and a hatred for space invaders. News of the Montana massacre spread like wildfire across Earth. The Virexians called it an act of terrorism. They demanded punishment, reparations, and control of all human military assets. They threatened orbital bombardment. But Earth had had enough. That was the day the world stopped being divided by borders. Russians sent tanks to Montana, but not to conquer, just to help fortify. China shared its best defense satellites with the U.S. African nations, opened up old Cold War bunkers, and donated food and gear. Brazil launched a space fleet they'd secretly been building for decades. The entire planet went dark for 3 days. No satellite signals, no broadcasts, just silence. And then, the message was broadcast across the galaxy in over 300 alien dialects. This is Earth, home of the human race. Effective immediately, this planet is a declared no-fly zone. Any unauthorized vessel entering our atmosphere will be treated as hostile and neutralized. You came to conquer. Now we dare you to try again. It wasn't a bluff. The first Virexian scout ship that re-entered Earth's orbit was vaporized before it could even blink. The second ship, some kind of diplomat vessel, was shot down by a coalition of Iranian and Canadian anti-space artillery. By the time the third one showed up, humans had already placed nuclear mines in orbit. We were done asking for mercy. We were done being polite. Earth was no longer a backwater. We were a fortress, a trap, a warning. And in the quiet before the next storm, people everywhere, farmers, hackers, ex-soldiers, students, started training. Because now we knew the truth. The galaxy didn't fear us because we were weak. They feared us because one day we'd stop being afraid. The first month after the declaration was filled with silence, not peace, just a heavy, waiting kind of quiet. The kind you get before a storm breaks over the hills. Governments called it a galactic stalemate. But on the ground, we called it what it really was: breathing room. Every country scrambled. Weapons that had once been locked away under ice, buried in deserts, or stored in secret vaults were pulled out, dusted off, and modernized. Old enemies shared secrets. Nations that hadn't spoken in decades were suddenly exchanging satellite intel and fusion tech like kids' trading cards. And still, the Virexians didn't make a move. That silence, it messed with people's heads. Some thought it was over, that we'd scared them off for good. Others said the council was just regrouping, planning something bigger. The truth was, no one knew, so we prepared like hell. The little town of Helena, Montana, Ground Zero, was turned into a fortress. The locals refused to leave, even after the government offered to relocate them. They just laughed. "We already made our stand," one old woman said, lighting a cigarette on her porch next to a mounted alien skull. "Might as well see how the story ends." Helena became a symbol. People across Earth started calling it Human Line Zero. Civilians went there to volunteer. Engineers helped upgrade its defenses. Veterans showed up to train anyone willing to learn. Teenagers came with rifles and drones, ready to fight aliens with whatever they had. Some brought nothing but fists and fury. And then came the ships, not Virexians. No, these were scavengers, bottom feeders of the galaxy. Word had spread fast across the stars. Earth had flipped the game board. Now everyone wanted a piece. Maybe they thought we were weak from rebellion. Maybe they just wanted to test the edges of the no-fly zone. Either way, we answered. The first was a Zarnak slave barge. Ugly thing. Looked like a rusted fishbone with engines strapped to the back. It tried to land near Lagos. Didn't get far. A swarm of Nigerian sky hunters, homemade drones packed with kinetic warheads, ripped it to pieces mid-air. The wreckage fell into the ocean, lit up like fireworks on the way down. The second was a pirate crew from the Andromex Syndicate. They didn't even make it to the atmosphere. The Israeli-Mexican orbital defense laser fried their ship so clean, the debris didn't even touch the ground. Just space dust now. People started calling it Earth's teeth. You see, they thought we were still scared, that our fear would keep us in line. What they didn't get was that fear had evolved into something worse. Fury. And humans with fury, we don't beg, we build, we resist, and when pushed too far, we bite back hard. Meanwhile, underground alliances formed. Not all humans were happy with the war. Some still clung to Virexian promises of prosperity and off-world escape. They called themselves the Enlightened. Traitors, most folks said. Rich elites and coward scientists who would sell their own blood for a chance to leave Earth behind. Rumors said they were trying to open a gateway for reinforcements. But if they were quiet about it. For now. Then, one night, the stars changed. Literally. An entire constellation, Orion, just flickered. Not like a glitch or natural phenomena. It was strategic, deliberate. Somebody, somewhere out there, was signaling. And the signal wasn't for us. Astronomers and military AI decoded it within hours. The message was clear. Initiate cleansing protocol. Earth has become unstable. We didn't know who sent it. The Virexians? A higher council? Some ancient power watching from the dark? Didn't matter. Because that message wasn't just an announcement, it was a countdown. It started with the tides. All across the planet, oceans began to shift unnaturally. Tides surged in patterns that no scientist could explain. The moon hadn't moved. Earth's rotation was steady. But something massive, something foreign, was pulling at the planet's water like a hand reaching across space. Within hours, reports flooded in. Strange energy readings from the deep sea, faint seismic activity beneath tectonic plates, skies flickering with streaks of violet light invisible to the naked eye, but caught clearly by surveillance satellites. Birds stopped migrating, whales vanished, migratory patterns collapsed in confusion. The Earth was holding its breath. The cleansing protocol wasn't just a military attack. It was a system, a machine, a process. designed not just to destroy, but to erase. High above the atmosphere, beyond the reach of even our longest-range weapons, a fleet appeared. Not ships, stations, ancient, unmoving, cold as death. They hovered there like judges, quietly aligning themselves in a perfect triangle around Earth. No communication, no threats. Just the cold, mechanical logic of execution. We weren't prepared for this. Every government scrambled. Air forces launched interceptors. Lasers fired into the sky. Private tech firms unleashed swarms of autonomous defense drones. Nothing touched them. Our weapons either burned out mid-flight or vanished as if they never existed. One by one, our best tech failed. That's when the panic hit. Cities descended into chaos. Not everywhere. Some places held strong. But the pressure broke a lot of people. The enlightened surfaced again, whispering about escape pods and hidden wormholes. Some tried to hijack launch pads. Others offered up coordinates to the invaders in exchange for clemency. A few went further. They sabotaged defense networks, crashed orbital satellites, spread disinformation through global networks. But not all hope was lost. While governments cracked and factions turned, the people in Helena, Montana stood firm. They weren't soldiers. They were farmers, teachers, ex-cons, dreamers, outcasts. But they had something no fleet, no alien algorithm could understand. Conviction. They built something no one expected. A transmitter. Not to ask for mercy, not to send warnings. Number they broadcast a challenge, a direct call to whatever entities floated above the sky. You think we're scared of dying? The message crackled through every frequency, every hacked channel, even piggybacking on the alien pulse signals themselves. You think this planet is yours to clean? We built this place from dirt and blood. If you want it, come down and try. It didn't stop the cleansing protocol. But it changed something. For the first time, one of the stations moved. It rotated slowly like it was looking. As if, for the first time, Earth had spoken a language it recognized. Not of words, but of will. Then came the spark. Above Siberia, the air cracked open like glass. Not a ship. Not a beam. Just space itself folding inward. And out of that impossible wound stepped a creature. 12 feet tall, limbs like shadows, a body flickering between dimensions. It didn't speak, didn't move with sound. It arrived. Earth satellites caught it instantly. Within minutes, it was named Entity Sigma, not Virexian, not even something the Virexians would bow to. This was older, cleaner. Like a galactic janitor, here to scrub out a problem, and we were the mess. It didn't kill anything, not at first. It just walked, through forests, cities, oceans. Everything it passed through died. Plants wilted, machines shorted out, water turned black. It was like a walking entropy field, pure erasure. People fled in every direction, military jets engaged. Nothing landed. Bullets passed through it like smoke. Lasers blinked out before they touched its body. One pilot launched a tactical nuke straight at its path. The warhead detonated. The blast wiped out half a province. But when the fire cleared, Entity Sigma was still walking, untouched, unbothered. For a moment, it seemed like all resistance was pointless. Until a farmer's son in Montana, barely 17, sharp as a whip, angry as hell, launched a drone he'd built with his friends. Just a prototype, nothing fancy, but the drone carried something new. Not a weapon, but data. Images of every human sacrifice made in the past year. Every burned town, every kidnapped child, every rebellion. It streamed that into Sigma's field, broadcasting straight into whatever sensors it had. And for the first time, Sigma stopped. Not destroyed, not distracted. Stopped. Just long enough for the world to take a breath. Just long enough for us to realize. Maybe we weren't just rats in a maze. Maybe the universe had underestimated how hard a cornered species could bite. The moment Sigma stopped, everything paused with it. It was like the entire planet held its breath. Satellites orbiting high above watched in eerie silence as the entity stood in the middle of what used to be a wheat field in Belarus, surrounded by a 50-mile circle of scorched earth. All around it, the land lay lifeless. Blackened trees, dead rivers, buildings sagging like exhausted bones. But it didn't move. Not for 5 minutes, not for 10. The drone that had reached it, a rigged-up piece of homemade engineering stitched together with parts from an old motorcycle engine, weather balloons, and a stolen military processor, hovered nearby, blinking a green light. Sigma didn't strike it down. Instead, it turned, not toward the drone, but toward Earth. As if, for the first time, it actually saw us. It was a strange, terrible thing, seeing something that wasn't alive in any normal sense respond. Sigma didn't have a face. No eyes, no mouth. Just that flickering silhouette made of shifting black and white lines, like static on a dead TV screen. And yet it stared. It was then that something unprecedented happened. It spoke, not with sound, not even with language, but directly into the minds of everyone within a 1,000-mile radius. Soldiers dropped their rifles, children screamed, old men wept. It was like being plugged straight into a machine older than thought. The message wasn't words, it was a judgment. "You are deviation," that's all it said. But it said it to everyone. People dropped to their knees. Some went mad instantly, clawing at their ears, screaming nonsense. Others fainted. And some, very few, stood their ground. Back in Helena, a broadcast center deep under a fortified barn picked up a signal. Not just the psychic message, but something encoded in Sigma's form. The 17-year-old kid who'd built the drone, Elijah Burns, was watching it in real time. He saw something others didn't. Inside the static of Sigma's flickering form, there were faces. Human faces. Old ones, children, soldiers, workers, flashing for just a second each. People we'd lost. People who'd vanished when the Virexians began their peacekeeping years ago. Elijah did what no one else thought to do. He froze the footage, enhanced the blur, and ran facial recognition. What came back was terrifying. Sigma wasn't a weapon. It was a collector. Every being it touched, every living thing it walked through, it didn't kill them. It stored them. The realization swept through the underground networks like wildfire. The scientists in Japan called it dimensional sequestration, a living archive. The cleansing protocol wasn't about extermination. It was about containment, locking humanity in a galactic vault and sealing it away forever. We weren't just being deleted from the galaxy. We were being preserved as a warning. The fear turned to rage. Around the world, resistance cells mobilized. Hackers, engineers, rogue AIs, old spies from forgotten wars. They all came together. For once, Earth acted like a single organism, not divided by borders or flags or old grudges, just one burning instinct: survive. And maybe get some payback. The UN, or what was left of it, authorized Operation Wildfire, a coordinated global assault not to kill Sigma, but to trap it. We couldn't destroy it. Not yet. But if we could cage it long enough, we could broadcast the truth across the stars, show the rest of the galaxy what the cleansing really was. We built the trap in Iceland. Why there? Because Iceland had been abandoned early in the invasion. It was empty, cold, isolated, perfect for what came next. Using the last of the Virexian tech we hadn't destroyed, Earth's best scientists created a frequency net, something that would collapse Sigma's form into a temporary physical state, giving us 30 seconds, maybe 40, to inject it with a neural disruptor that would freeze its dimensional field. It was a suicide mission, and everyone involved knew it. Elijah volunteered to be the bait. No one was surprised. He'd become something of a symbol already. The kid who made the entity pause. He stood alone on the Icelandic tundra, wearing a suit lined with every sensor Earth could wire together, broadcasting a constant stream of human emotion. Rage, loss, defiance. Sigma came, faster this time, no hesitation. It hit the field, and for the first time, it screamed, not a sound, not words, just a psychic howl that made the mountains tremble and the northern lights go dark. But it was working. The trap held. For 33 seconds. That was all we got. But it was enough. The 33 seconds changed everything. The moment the frequency net tightened around Sigma, the world felt it, like the pressure in the atmosphere had suddenly been released. The creature's form stopped flickering. No more phasing, no more shifting between realities. It was solid, heavy, real. And for the first time, we saw it bleed. Not blood, not anything natural, but a thick, metallic mist hissed out from fractures in its body, leaking like pressurized gas. Whatever Sigma was, it wasn't invincible. It just hadn't been challenged the right way before. The neural disruptor hit next, fired from a railgun embedded deep inside the ice, powered by every remaining fusion core we had left. It slammed straight into the entity's chest. It pulsed once, like a black hole folding inward, and then collapsed to its knees. For a moment, there was silence. Elijah stood just 50 yards away, staring at the motionless form as snow whipped around him. His suit's sensors were maxed out, screaming with data streams, dimensional readings, and radiation levels so high that the techs back in Helena nearly had a heart attack. But he didn't move. He just stared. Because as Sigma knelt, it did something no one expected. It looked human, not physically. But in that moment of weakness, the form, once so alien, so incomprehensible, twitched like a man in pain. It clutched its chest. It reached for something. And then, for a split second, Elijah heard a voice. "Release us." Not a demand, not a threat, a plea. Before anyone could react, the entity pulsed again. A shockwave burst from its core, knocking Elijah unconscious and destroying half the facility. The net collapsed. The neural field fizzled, and just like that, Sigma vanished. Gone. But not for good. Satellites picked up a new energy reading moments later. Not in orbit, not in the sky, underground. Sigma had phased into the Earth itself. It was hiding now, regenerating, adapting, learning, and worst of all, it had hurt us. The trap hadn't just hurt it. It had connected us. The transmission Elijah sent, full of emotion, memories, grief, had pierced through whatever logic ruled the entity. It had opened a door we didn't understand. And now, something inside Sigma had changed. Elijah was unconscious for 4 days. When he woke up, his first words weren't about Sigma. They weren't about the mission or the trap. They were a question. How many are in there? The scientists didn't understand at first. But Elijah insisted. He heard them. Not just one voice, but hundreds, thousands, like souls trapped inside a machine. That's when it hit us. Sigma wasn't a collector. It was a prison. Every person it ever absorbed was still inside, alive, frozen in some timeless state between dimensions. The faces we saw, the emotions that poured through the psychic blast, they weren't simulations. They were real people. And Sigma was carrying them. Suddenly, everything made sense. The erasure, the quiet footsteps through cities, the way it ignored most weapons. It wasn't destroying us, it was archiving us. Earth wasn't being wiped clean, it was being filed away like a corrupted folder in a system backup. But who was behind it? We didn't have long to think. The sky darkened again, just like the first time. But this wasn't the Virexians, wasn't scavengers or pirates. This was something worse. From the far edge of the solar system, a fleet entered real space. Not ships, monoliths, geometric matte black objects the size of islands, with no engines, no lights, no noise. They drifted toward Earth with slow, deliberate precision. We didn't know their name, but we knew their purpose. They were here to finish the job Sigma had started. If Sigma was the scalpel, they were the bone saw. And Earth had 36 hours before atmospheric entry. Every global defense system went red. Martial law was declared. Bunkers opened. Evacuation plans activated. But to where? There was nowhere to run. No ships that could escape fast enough. Earth was a cage, and the executioners were inbound. But this time, we weren't caught off guard. This time we had time, just enough to try something insane. Elijah stood up from his hospital bed, still pale, still shaking, and said only one thing. "We need to go back in." "Into what?" the general asked. He looked up. "Into Sigma." No one wanted to approve it. The idea sounded suicidal, even by Earth's new standards. Entering Sigma? Voluntarily stepping into a multidimensional prison that had absorbed thousands, possibly millions, of sentient beings? Madness. But Elijah was calm, sharper than he'd ever been since the drone incident. He spoke like someone who had seen something no one else could. He claimed Sigma wasn't just a prison. It was a pathway, a link between Earth and something older, buried in the folds of time and space, a forgotten truth about humanity's place in the galaxy. He didn't have proof, just memories, fragments burned into his mind from that moment the disruptor hit Sigma. But somehow that was enough. The mission was greenlit. Barely. They called it Operation Echo Dive. 3 volunteers were selected. Not soldiers, not politicians. People who had nothing left to lose. Dr. Marla Chen, a quantum physicist who'd lost her family in the New York cleansing. Sergeant Luis Ortega, ex-Special Forces, the only survivor of the Lima Bunker massacre. Elijah Burns, the trigger, the anomaly, the connection. The plan was simple in theory. Find Sigma, re-establish contact using the frequency Elijah used before, and trigger a controlled phase dive into its dimensional core. Once inside, locate survivors, or at least proof of them, and attempt to communicate with Sigma's intelligence. But there was one catch. No one who entered Sigma had ever come back. They found it 2 miles beneath the Arctic tundra, crouched silently inside a glacial cave that hadn't existed a month ago. Its body pulsed with a dull light now, softer, slower, like it was sleeping or waiting. Elijah walked in first. No guns, no armor, just the transmitter strapped to his chest and a globe-shaped quantum tether developed by Marla's team. It would keep them linked to this dimension, at least in theory. Sigma didn't react at first, but as Elijah approached, it pulsed once, then opened. Not physically, not like a mouth or door. It just split, space bending like fabric torn down the center. A rift opened behind its chest, filled with swirling white static and impossible echoes. They stepped through, and the world changed. They weren't standing anymore. They weren't floating. They were. Inside the entity, space collapsed into memory. The ground beneath their feet was paved with flickers, visions of moments, frozen in time. A child playing in a destroyed park. A woman screaming as a plasma beam cut through a shelter. A man holding his wife's hand, both dissolving into static. They weren't just memories. They were souls. Dr. Chen whispered, "It's a tomb." Elijah shook his head. "Number, it's a waiting room." They moved deeper. Every step pulled them closer to a central core, a sphere of blinding energy, humming like a choir of lost voices. In it, they saw faces, recognizable ones, friends, family, soldiers. Some were crying, some just stared, frozen in place, like statues made of light. Then, something moved. Not Sigma. Not exactly. A shadow rose behind the core, tall and silent. A figure made of nothing but shapes. A humanoid outline shifting constantly between male and female, adult and child, old and young. No face, no form, just presence. And it spoke. "You have entered the record of deviation. Why?" Dr. Chen stepped forward. "Because we are not deviation." The voice responded instantly. "Your violence, your history, your defiance, you break order, you consume." Elijah answered, "And yet you remember us. You keep us." Silence. Then, "To warn others." "No," Elijah said, heart pounding. "You keep us because you're afraid of us. Not because we're dangerous, but because we're unpredictable. Because we don't follow the rules. Because we don't obey." The shape pulsed. "Obedience preserves harmony." "But disobedience creates freedom," Dr. Chen said. There was a long pause, and then, for the first time, something shifted in the light around them. The frozen souls, one by one, turned their heads, slowly, blinking, awakening. A whisper rose through the space, like wind in a ruined cathedral. "Let us speak." The core pulsed. Their tether began to overload. The quantum field blinked red. They had seconds before the dive failed. Sergeant Ortega growled, "We've got to go now." But Elijah stayed still. "Not yet. They're trying to help." The figure, the guardian, whatever it was, leaned forward. "This is not permitted." Elijah stepped closer, eyes locked with the shifting form. "Then try and stop us." Everything shattered. Not in the literal sense. The walls didn't crumble, the sky didn't fall. But the moment Elijah said those words, the very laws of the place fractured. The static haze around them burst into chaotic noise, a deafening echo of millions of voices overlapping, screaming, praying, laughing, crying, all at once. The Guardian's form cracked. It didn't fall or disappear. It split into hundreds of pieces, each fragment shooting through the space like burning comets, bouncing off the frozen souls trapped in the core. With every collision, more of them woke up, faces turning, eyes blinking, mouths opening. Some began to speak. "Where are we? Am I dead? Elijah?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. The weight of it all, the voices, the confusion, the humanity, nearly crushed him. His knees buckled, his vision blurred. Sergeant Ortega grabbed his shoulder, steadying him. "Breathe, kid. You started this storm, now ride it out." Dr. Chen was already scanning the environment, her equipment barely functional, sparks flying from the tether on her back. She screamed over the psychic noise. "The core's destabilizing. This many minds active at once. It's overloading the system." "But if we pull out now," Elijah gasped, "they'll be trapped again." "No," she said, her voice trembling with awe. "If we pull out now, they'll tear Sigma apart from the inside." Ortega's eyes narrowed. "You're saying we can destroy it? End the cleansing?" She nodded. "If these minds, these people, reclaim their place in the system, Sigma fails. The cleansing ends. It's not a prison anymore. It becomes a rebellion." Elijah turned back to the floating souls. "Then we need to wake all of them." But it wasn't that simple. The moment the Guardian shattered, Sigma's core began to react. The static storm intensified, forming defenses, spikes of dark energy, memory loops meant to trap them in personal illusions. Ortega was the first hit. He froze mid-step, eyes wide. "I'm back in Peru," he muttered. "My squad's alive. They're laughing. We're on patrol. It's sunny. God, I missed the sun." "Elijah!" Dr. Chen shouted. "He's caught in a loop!" Elijah rushed to him, slapping the sergeant across the face. "Luis, look at me. That memory isn't real. They're gone. You survived. You carried them with you. Now fight for them." The old soldier blinked. Once. Twice. Then he growled and punched the air in front of him. The illusion shattered like glass. He gasped, sweat pouring down his face. Never again. The system was fighting back harder now. Elijah turned to Dr. Chen. If we can link all these minds, form a single stream, we can collapse the prison. How? She asked. We need a conduit, he said. Someone who's connected to all of them. Her eyes went wide. You, she whispered. He nodded. He didn't know why or how, but since that first contact, something inside him had changed. He'd been hearing them, feeling them, dreaming their memories. Maybe it was the drone. Maybe it was Sigma's failed attempt to absorb him. Maybe it was something older, deeper, something buried in humanity itself. But Elijah was the link. He stepped into the center of the core, ignoring the pain as the energy burned through his skin, his bones. Tell them, he whispered. Tell them who they are. He reached out, not with hands, but with thought. And then he shared. He showed the souls their world, Earth, the mountains, the oceans, the cities, their children, their homes, the music, the struggle, the beauty, the chaos, all of it. He gave them their memories, their names, their voices, and they responded. Like a choir rising from a grave, they sang, not in melody, but in presence. A tidal wave of human thought surged through the core, turning the prison into a beacon. Sigma began to crack, not from external weapons, but from the inside out. The dimensional space trembled. The static walls crumbled. Reality itself began to warp. Elijah, pull out! Dr. Chen screamed. But Elijah didn't move. His body was glowing now, veins lit with data, eyes full of stars. He turned to them one last time. You're free. And with that, he let go. The tether snapped. The core exploded. The explosion wasn't like anything Earth had ever seen. It didn't burn. It didn't blast. It simply unfolded, space itself peeling back like layers of paper, revealing something beneath. A burst of light erupted from the Arctic, not upward, but outward, racing across every corner of the planet in a wave of golden energy. It passed through walls, cities, mountains, harmless, but undeniable. And with it came the voices, the lost, the forgotten, the taken. They returned. One by one, across the world, people fell to their knees as missing children reappeared on doorsteps. Parents stared in shock as long-dead soldiers walked into their homes, confused, frightened, but alive. Whole towns that had vanished during the cleansing began reforming, matter rebuilding, people blinking into reality like waking from a long sleep. The dead hadn't died. They had been stored. Now they were home. Sigma was gone, shattered completely. The dimensional prison collapsed, leaving nothing behind but faint traces of quantum residue and one name whispered across the static of every radio channel, every comm tower, every frequency on Earth. Elijah Burns. He didn't make it out. No body, no signature. Just the echo of his final thought, broadcast from the core in a signal that reached the deepest parts of the galaxy. I am human, and I am not afraid. The monolith fleet never made landfall. The moment Sigma collapsed, they halted mid-entry, as if caught in confusion. Their formation broke. Some turned away. Others simply vanished, phased out of existence as if they were never real, or maybe never meant to act without Sigma's control. And the message Earth had prepared, its warning, its declaration, its fury, was no longer necessary, because the galaxy was already listening. Helena, Montana became more than a fortress. It became a shrine. People traveled from every continent to stand in the place where the resistance began. The barn where Elijah had launched his first drone was preserved exactly as it was. Burn marks, broken floorboards, jury-rigged transmitters and all. A memorial statue was raised outside, not of him holding a weapon, but holding a child, one of the many he helped bring back. The phrase carved beneath it read, "We bit the hand that tried to erase us." Dr. Marla Chen became Earth's ambassador to the stars, not because she wanted to, but because she was needed. In the power vacuum left by Sigma's destruction, dozens of alien species, some once complicit, others merely afraid, reached out. Not with threats, with apologies, with questions, with respect. She met them not as a servant, not as a beggar, but as an equal, as a human. Sergeant Ortega returned to Peru. Quietly. He never gave interviews, never accepted medals. But every night he lit a candle for the squad he lost, and for the boy who gave them back something bigger than revenge. Peace. As for Earth, it changed. Borders didn't vanish, but they mattered less. Nations still disagreed, still fought, still struggled. But beneath it all was a shared scar, a memory of what the galaxy had tried to do. The knowledge that they'd stood together and survived something unimaginable. Humanity became united in a way it never had before. And out in deep space, far beyond the reach of any telescope or probe, something stirred. A ripple, a signature, a flare of energy, familiar and strange all at once. Inside it, a presence, watching, waiting. Elijah Burns wasn't gone, not entirely. Somewhere in the folds of space that Sigma had once occupied, something of him remained, not flesh, not bone, but will. A spark of human defiance woven into the fabric of the universe. And in that distant place where no light reached, the stars bent slightly, just for a moment. As if nodding, as if acknowledging the truth the galaxy had tried so hard to ignore. This is Earth, home of the human race. We do not forget, we do not surrender, and we do not go quietly